If you click this video, you're probably like me in that you love a fun and immersive single-player video game. And if that's the case, I've got some great news. 2021 looks to deliver a ton of fantastic experiences for you and you alone. With two exceptions, every game I mention in this video is confirmed to release in the next 12 months. Now, I'll be covering a lot of these games in detail on my channel, so if that's something you're interested in, I hope you'll consider subscribing. But for now, I hope you'll join me as I look at gameplay details in no particular order for 20 of the biggest and most interesting single-player games of 2021. Set to release for PC, Xbox, and PlayStation consoles on January 20th, with a streaming release for Switch sometime later, Hitman 3 looks to conclude the current trilogy of games. The gameplay looks right in line with what fans have come to expect, but the visuals seem to be getting a major upgrade. Improved lighting, new water effects, more fluid animations, and environments with up to 300 AI-controlled NPCs are just some of the upgrades that should add to the realism. We also know that Agent 47 will visit new locations, including a Chinese metropolis, a mysterious old mansion, and a skyscraper in Dubai. The game will also feature a long list of weapons, new disguises, and a new camera that you can use for hacking. And of course, there will be plenty of ways to assassinate your targets. You can push them down a hacked elevator shaft, poison their meals, snipe them from afar, or drop a chandelier on their head. Plus, there are 20 different mastery tiers per level that you can unlock, each encouraging you to replay levels as they provide access to new starting locations and new weapons stashed in different areas. And if that wasn't enough, if you already own Hitman 1 and 2, you'll be able to play them both with all the technical upgrades of Hitman 3. And all three games are coming to PlayStation VR. That's a lot to expect, and again, it's all coming on January 20th. From the studio behind the Layers of Fear series and the recent Blair Witch adaptation comes The Medium, a new third-person horror adventure inspired by the Silent Hill series that's releasing exclusively for the Xbox Series X, S, and PC. What makes this game special is that it takes place not in one world, but two. The game simultaneously renders the physical world and the spirit world, and the SSD within the Xbox Series allows you to jump back and forth with no load times as you solve puzzles and work your way through the game's environments. One way this plays out is by using the main character's out-of-body ability. You can leave your physical form as you enter the spirit realm. This allows you to reach places you wouldn't be able to otherwise and solve puzzles that span both worlds. You also have a Spirit Blast, which you can use against enemies, but it also lets you charge items in the real world with electricity. The Medium definitely looks like a clever game, and it's set to release on January 28th. Like The Medium, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart is one of a few truly next-gen exclusives coming out in 2021. Using the power of the PS5's super-fast SSD, the game is able to load its levels almost instantaneously, which allows Ratchet and Clank to teleport between levels in more or less real time with no loading screens. The duo can also teleport within levels to reach new areas and gain an advantage in combat using a new tool called the Rift Tether. Being true to the series, Rift Apart will of course feature a ton of new weapons, including a grenade launcher of some sort called the Shatter Bomb, an ice-blasting turret called the Topiary Sprinkler, and a double-barreled shotgun called the Enforcer. One cool detail about the Enforcer is how it will take advantage of the DualSense controller. The resistance on the adaptive triggers will become stronger after you've fired one barrel, and if you keep pressing, you'll then fire both barrels for a stronger shot. One final noteworthy addition to Rift Apart is this female Lombax. We don't know her name yet, but we do know that she's a playable character. Overall, the game looks gorgeous, and all we know for a release date is that it's expected to come out in the first half of 2021. Based on the trailers and everything I've read, Deathloop has the potential to be one of the most interesting games of 2021. In short, you play an assassin in a time loop. You have 24 hours to explore an island and hunt down 8 targets. If you die or if you fail to kill all of your marks before midnight, you have to start over. But in each attempt, you discover the intricacies of the island and you learn the schedules and vulnerabilities of your targets. For example, at one point in the day, there's a masquerade party on one end of the island. In order to assassinate one of your targets, you have to figure out how to get him to attend. The more you learn, the more efficient you become, and the more targets you can kill. As for the island itself, it's divided into 4 distinct districts, and they're all connected. That is to say, the game sounds more like an open world than a level-based experience. When it comes to combat, you will have guns and melee abilities, but you'll also have several supernatural abilities, such as teleportation and telekinesis. Complicating matters is a rival assassin trying to pick you off. The idea of one big island to explore and one big assassination contract to fulfill, which combine to create what is basically one big puzzle to solve, sounds incredible. For that reason, Deathloop is one of my most anticipated games of the year. It releases as a 12-month timed exclusive for PS5 and PC on May 21st. We don't know much about God of War Ragnarok, but we do know that Sony hopes to release it, surprisingly enough, in 2021. Based on the name and the artwork in the teaser trailer, the game will take place in the same Norse-themed world as the 2018 masterpiece, and it will likely focus on the attached mythology. And while this goes without saying, we can assume based on the voice in the trailer that Kratos will be in the game, but what we don't know is what role Atreus will play. Will he be much older? Will he be playable? We'll have to wait and see. And if you didn't know, the word Ragnarok refers to a mythological global cataclysm in Norse mythology where the world nearly ends and many of the great Norse gods like Thor, Odin, and Loki all die. Given that Kratos has a history of killing gods, this seems fitting and very indicative of what we can expect. If Ragnarok does release in 2021, I'd say it's fair to expect it sometime in the fall. Gotham Knights is the next AAA game to be set in Gotham City. But here's the catch, it doesn't star Batman. Instead, Batman has supposedly died and it's up to 4 other heroes to save the city. Those heroes are Batgirl, Nightwing, Red Hood, and Robin. As for gameplay, Gotham Knights' official site describes it as, quote, an open-world action RPG set in the most dynamic and interactive Gotham City yet. We don't know how the open world will play out, but we do know that the game will feature RPG elements, such as character progression and a leveling system that applies to both you and your enemies. And based on the gameplay demo shown at DC Fandom, it looks like the gameplay focuses heavily on combat, with each hero bringing their own unique skill set. For example, Robin can apparently teleport. Yes, teleport. While Batgirl looks to have these cool red nunchucks. Also, you'll have this badass motorcycle. Finally, it's worth noting that this game isn't exactly a pure single-player experience. You can play with one other player in co-op, but apparently the game can be played entirely solo. As long as players who play alone don't miss out on any content, that's fine by me. You'll have to forgive me, but I'm only showing screenshots here since Capcom is notorious for issuing copyright claims for showing gameplay footage. But getting right into it, Resident Evil Village will take place several years after the events of Resident Evil 7, and it will star Ethan Winters, who played the lead role in that game. And just like in Resident Evil 7, Village will take place in the first person, but instead of a crusty old house, the game takes place in, well, a crusty old village. That said, there is this castle in the distance, and that could be the interior setting we see here, which looks much more ornate and, dare I say, inviting. As for the gameplay, we know Village will feature a very familiar take on the inventory management system of previous games, and it's likely that we can expect the same style of puzzles as well. But the developers have said that this game will feature a heavier emphasis on action, and based on the trailers, there will be no shortage of enemies to deal with. Among other details we know is that Chris Redfield makes a return, and it sounds like he might even play a villainous role. It also seems like, based on this clip and the fact that the inventory screen features some sort of currency, that the merchant from Resident Evil 4 might make a return. Village is coming out sometime in 2021, with a recent leak indicating that it could launch as soon as April. Fingers crossed. Originally set for a February release, Far Cry 6 was unfortunately delayed until the first half of Ubisoft's fiscal year, which starts on April 1st. However, a leak from the Microsoft Store listed a potential release date of May 25th. But again, that's not confirmed. We do know that the sixth entry in the Far Cry series will take place on a fictional Caribbean island called Yara, held under the rule of the game's villain, a dictator named Anton Castillo. You'll play as an island local named Danny Rojos, and you'll join a guerrilla uprising to take control of the island and overthrow the oppressive regime. As for gameplay, we do know a few details. For one, this is the first Far Cry game that will feature a large city, and hence the environments will be among the most vertical we've ever seen in the series. We also know that since the island of Yara is so isolated, and because your guerrilla army has to make do with whatever they have, your arsenal will be apparently, as Game Informer puts it, unconventional. I'm expecting a bunch of homemade guns and bombs, and maybe even a new weapon crafting system. It's also been revealed that the Guns for Hire system is back, and that includes Fangs for Hire, one of which will be Chorizo the adorable sausage dog. And yes, he's on wheels. Finally, we know that Castillo's son will somehow play into the story. Will he help you, or will he turn out to be a villain as well? We'll have to wait and see. This past summer, we finally got a good look at the rumored Harry Potter game that we knew would be published by WB Games. On its official website, the game is described as, quote, an immersive open-world action RPG set in the world first introduced by the Harry Potter books. More specifically, the game takes place in Hogwarts. No surprise there, but it doesn't take place in the present day. Instead, the game is set during the 1800s. As for gameplay, the site also says that you'll, quote, journey through familiar and new locations as you explore and discover fantastic beasts, customize your character and craft potions, master spellcasting, upgrade talents, and become the wizard you want to be. As for the story, we know you'll play as a student of Hogwarts, and you'll have the unique ability to, quote, perceive and master ancient magic. Finally, it sounds like the game might feature some sort of morality system. Again, on the game's official site, we learned that your character holds the key to an ancient secret that could destroy the world, and that, quote, only you can decide if you will protect this secret for the good of all, or yield to the temptation of more sinister magic. Furthermore, an article on PC Gamer said that you'll be able to choose which house you align with at the beginning of the game. As you can see, Hogwarts Legacy looks pretty spectacular, and thankfully it is in fact set for a 2021 release. From the same studio behind the Evil Within games, GHOSTWIRE TOKfYO is a spooky first-person action adventure set in Japan's most famous metropolis. In this version of Tokyo, 99% of the population has vanished, and the streets have since been overtaken by all sorts of spectral creatures. Exploration will definitely be a key part of the game, as it sounds like climbing buildings and wandering alleys will take up much of your time, but based on the trailer, supernatural combat seems to dominate the gameplay. Shinichiro Hara, combat director on GHOSTWIRE TOKfYO, said this of the combat, quote, "We want the player to feel like a badass, spellcasting, high-tech ninja exorcist defeating countless evil spirits." Bethesda also described the combat as, quote, "intricate and combo-based." Finally, based on a tweet from the official GHOSTWIRE TOKfYO account, it looks like one objective of the game will be to cleanse regions of Tokyo from the supernatural corruption that has overrun the city. Ultimately, we still have a lot to learn about this game, but it should release sometime in 2021 as a 12-month timed exclusive on PS5 and PC. For a game set within such a popular universe, Lord of the Rings GOLLUM has received surprisingly little promotion. But in an article posted to IGN back in August, lead game designer Martin Wilkes revealed a surprising amount of detail. Quote, "The game mixes stealth with vertical climbing parkour. If you want a reference, you might think of it as similar to Prince of Persia. It's mostly a non-combat game, but GOLLUM will be able to stealthily take out enemies. We also know that while Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War were open-world games, this world will be divided into separate levels connected by hubs. In other words, expect a more linear or at least a more contained experience. As for how these levels will play out, we know that to solve the game's challenges, you'll have to make up for GOLLUM's limited skill set. You'll do this by relying on abilities of allies you meet throughout the story, and by interacting with the level to solve stealth and environmental puzzles. Finally, it sounds like GOLLUM will feature some form of interactive branching storyline. According again to that article on IGN, you'll be able to make choices, particularly within certain dialogue sequences, that can affect the narrative. However, they won't affect the end of the game. Since this is a prequel to The Lord of the Rings, GOLLUM's fate is pretty much sealed. Yes, multiplayer is a huge part of the Halo experience, but the campaign in Halo Infinite is where much of the attention has been focused so far. Now set to release in the fall, it appears that 343 Industries hopes to modernize the franchise while also keeping things familiar and nostalgic. For the first time ever, we know the campaign will feature open-world environments. You can explore objectives off the beaten path or stick to the main story. And Joseph Staten, who now serves as creative director on Halo Infinite, said this is the most vertical of any Halo yet. That should come as no surprise given that one of the new traversal mechanics is a grappling hook. Infinite will also feature other new mechanics, including this new defensive drop wall. There's also been some emphasis put on armor, weapon, and vehicle customization, so that's cool. That said, it sounds like the next time we see new gameplay, things will look at least somewhat different. The recent update that 343 gave on the game confirmed that much of the time spent during the delay has been used to improve the game's visuals. In any case, it's nice to know we'll be playing the next Halo by the end of 2021. In Horizon Forbidden West, the sequel to 2017's Zero Dawn, Aloy will travel to the west coast of the former United States as she hopes to resolve a new global threat. It's called the Red Blight, and it's not only infected the world's landscapes and wildlife, but it's also caused the world's weather to spiral out of control. During your quest, it appears Aloy will visit a host of new locations including San Francisco, Yosemite National Park, and what appears to be Nevada's Mojave Desert. And then there's this shot, which features a sign showing 4 aces from a deck of cards, which has led some to speculate that Aloy might visit Las Vegas. One interesting gameplay element that seems to be more prevalent this time around is underwater exploration. Here it seems that Aloy is not only able to hide amidst the underwater foliage, but she might also have some sort of breathing device allowing her to stay submerged for longer. Lastly, the game will feature a variety of new machines, including this turtle-like shell snapper, these giant boars, the pterodactyl-like sunwings, and these impressive Trumotusks. It's worth noting that these giant mammoths, while you will encounter them out in the wild, some have been domesticated and controlled by a rival tribe, which is interesting in and of itself. As for a release date, Sony has said to expect Forbidden West in the second half of 2021. Another PlayStation 5 exclusive, RETURNAL, is a third-person roguelite shooter that has you blasting and dodging your way through an alien planet in search of your escape. Just like with other roguelites, every time you die, you start over and the procedurally generated world changes for your next run. However, just as in games like Dead Cells, you'll apparently be able to collect upgrades during each attempt that you can use on future runs. As the official website puts it, you can, quote, scavenge alien tech for upgrades to enhance your abilities in future cycles. The game definitely looks to be inspired by arcade-style bullet hell shooters, which is no surprise given that RETURNAL's developer, Housemarque, built their name by delivering stellar arcade-style shooters like Resogun, Nex Machina, and Super Stardust. In fact, when it comes to shooters, I'm not sure Housemarque has ever shipped a bad game. So if you like challenging roguelites, this is definitely one to keep an eye on. Its PS5 release is set for March 19th. Even in 2021, Xbox Series X and S exclusives might still be somewhat hard to come by, but one to keep an eye on is SCORN. This is an incredibly atmospheric first-person shooter that looks heavily inspired by the Alien films and Prometheus, with the gross-out factor dialed up to way over 11. As for gameplay, while this is technically a first-person shooter, don't expect a pure action game. The game's director, whose name I couldn't even begin to pronounce, said in an interview with IGN that gameplay is, quote, pretty much 50-50 when it comes to gunplay and puzzles. We can also glean a lot more information about the gameplay from the description on SCORN's official site, which says that you'll, quote, explore different interconnected regions in a non-linear fashion, and that every location contains its own theme, puzzles, and characters that are integral in creating a cohesive world. So if you like to explore and you really like gross stuff, this game might be one for you. SCORN has been set for a release sometime within the Xbox Series launch window, though no specific date has been confirmed. PSYCHONAUTS may not be the most AAA game on this list, but given the cult following of the original, those looking forward to its release are really looking forward to its release. This is an old-school 3D platforming game where you'll explore surreal levels that literally take place inside other people's minds. You play as Raz, and as you work your way through the levels, you'll gain new psychic abilities such as the Time Bubble, which according to an update on Xbox.com, will allow you to, quote, slow down moving objects or obstacles to create makeshift platforms. You can also expect Tim Schafer's trademark sense of quirky humor, and even though Psychonauts 2 is now an Xbox Game Studios game, it will still release on PlayStation 4 as well as Xbox One and the Xbox Series. Also, Psychonauts 2 will apparently be optimized for Xbox Series X. No word on when in 2021 we can expect this, but my bet is that we'll see it during the first half of the year. I initially wasn't going to include the Skywalker Saga on this list, but the anticipation for this LEGO game seems particularly high, and it does admittedly sound impressive. This one game will feature levels that tell the stories of all 9 Star Wars films that make up the 3 Skywalker trilogies. And all the levels have been built from the ground up, so no, this isn't any sort of re-release of previous LEGO games. It's all new. We know the game will have over 500 characters, and apparently hundreds of characters and ships will be playable. Another cool aspect of the game is that it will allow you to choose where to start the saga. So if you want to play the films in the order they were released, or you want to play the story in chronological order, it's entirely up to you. In any case, according to a report on Android Central, each film will be divided into 5 levels for a total of 45 levels in all. And according to the game's official site, it should release on all major platforms in the spring of 2021. Kena Bridge of Spirits is definitely one of the smaller scale games on this list, but it caught many people's attention when it was first shown at this summer's PlayStation 5 debut event. This is a third-person action-adventure that focuses on exploration and combat, but the most unique aspect of the game are its cute little creatures called the Rot. These are companions that you find and recruit along your journey, and apparently there are 100 of them hidden throughout the world. As you collect and recruit them, they'll provide you with new combat abilities and they'll help you manipulate the environment in new ways. This could include mending a broken bridge so you can cross, or moving a block to help you reach a high-up area. Combat-wise, you'll have a staff that can apparently double as a bow, and among other abilities, you'll apparently have some sort of defensive force field. Structurally, the game is not an open-world game, but instead features a hub that allows you to explore several separate regions. If this looks like your style of game, you should be able to play it on PS5, PS4, or PC sometime in the first quarter of the year. Before anybody calls me on this, I want to point out that Elden Ring, at least at the time I posted this video, has not officially been confirmed for a 2021 release. However, as reported by several major news outlets, an industry insider has alleged that the game was originally set for release in Q1 of 2021, and that COVID has caused From Software to delay that to sometime in Q2 2021. As you probably know, Elden Ring is a collaboration with Soulsborne mastermind Hidetaka Miyazaki and Game of Thrones creator George R.R. Martin, so it's fair to expect a rich world steeped in lore and dripping with atmosphere. We also know that, according to Miyazaki, this is From Software's largest game ever by volume, and that Elden Ring's gameplay is based on Dark Souls. However, it's definitely not a clone. It will apparently feature a more open world than any Dark Souls game, and we know that you'll be able to traverse the world on horseback. That said, the game will feature castles and dungeons to explore, and as Miyazaki puts it, a quote, wide variety of unique and horrifying bosses for players to look forward to. In other words, you can still expect to die a lot. Having suffered an indefinite delay, Dying Light 2 is the last game on this list and the second one that hasn't officially been confirmed for a 2021 release. That said, this game was originally set for a spring 2020 launch, so I'm hopeful we'll see it before 2022. Unfortunately, we've heard next to nothing about how this game is moving forward, other than it is still in development. Anyhow, the big hook here, besides the game's large open world, its terrifying and innovative day-night cycle, and its fast-paced parkour, is how the world unfolds. In the demo shown all the way back at E3 2019, we saw a sequence where you were forced to make a decision to either turn on a set of water pumps or leave them turned off. Turning them on drains the water from a flooded portion of the map, leaving it open for exploration. The implication here is that entire regions of the world will open up or not, depending on what you do. This decision also affected whether or not an entire sect of people you're trying to help will get water to drink. Basically, it sounds like the developers are trying to make good on that oft-made promise that your decisions will have a real and lasting impact. Oh, and all the way back in 2018, it was confirmed that the map in Dying Light 2 will be 4 times the size of its predecessor. So there's that. And there you have it. Those are 20 of the biggest and most anticipated single-player games that are currently set to release in 2021. And there are still games I didn't cover. Games like Bravely Default 2, Scarlet Nexus, and the Prince of Persia remake, or even Breath of the Wild 2, which many are speculating might release by the end of the year. Anyhow, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a thumbs up and share it with friends, and maybe even subscribe to the channel. If you want to catch up with me and see what I'm playing, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Quest Mode Games. Until next time, I want to remind everyone to never stop questing.